There's tons of analysis being done post-election. Of course, we had an election last month. Results were certified last week. And you've got a whole host of different analysis that's happening as to what happened. And why did Republicans not do as well as some had predicted before the election? And in particular, what are Republicans in Illinois dealing with? There's all kinds of headlines from the National Republican Party trying to find new leadership for the private party. You've also got, even here in Illinois, an event over the weekend with central committeemen from across the state and grassroots activists showing up to their meeting, and things got pretty contentious there. But what are some of the things that people need to consider when talking about how to move forward in the Republican Party, especially in a state like Illinois? Well, let's talk with Core Strategies, and Colin Corbett, who's with Core Strategies. Most recently, they released a poll post-election, kind of showing some of the various things that people need to start considering. So, Colin, thanks for taking time with us here on WMAY. I'm Greg Bishop. What did you guys find? What are some of the high points?
Well, as you said, we wanted to get data. A lot of people are releasing their opinions of what happened, and they're just that, they're opinions. We've all got opinions. They all stink just like armpits. So we wanted actual data to find out what happened. And the first thing we found was in the demographic section. Any poll at the beginning, you ask a bunch of basic questions like gender and age and ethnicity. You don't expect to find really interesting data in that first section. It's just basic stuff. But we actually found something so interesting. We went in the field a second time to test it because we just didn't believe what we saw. And what we saw in there was that when we asked people, how do you consider yourself ideologically, conservative, moderate, or liberal? We expect in a deep blue state like this that's voted so overwhelmingly Democrat that liberal would win pretty handily. But that wasn't the case. Moderate actually was the number one identifier. People consider themselves in this state to be moderate way more than they do liberal. Moderate was 39%, whereas liberal was just 26%. This is not a far left state. It's a deep blue state at the moment because Democrats have dominated the middle, but it's not a far left state. This is a working class Mideastern state or a Midwestern state. And that's something that I don't think people expected. People are calling this the next New York, the next California, because it votes so blue. But that's not actually the case. This is still a moderate state, which means that Republicans do actually have a chance at winning in the future.
So would you characterize this as like a purple state, as we've heard before in the past?
It still is a blue state, and red versus blue means Republican versus Democrat, and Democrats are absolutely dominating. So right now, it's a blue state. But when we look to the future to see, do Republicans even have a chance? You don't say they have a chance in New York. You don't say they have a chance in California or some of those deep, deep blue liberal states. So it still is deep blue. It still is voting Democrat overwhelmingly, but that's because they're winning moderates by a massive margin. This is a moderate state. If it was a liberal state, you'd say Republicans don't have much of a chance because liberals just aren't going to vote for a Republican. But moderates will absolutely vote Republican if given the right candidate and given the right message. So it's deep blue, but there is hope for the future for Republicans.
And we'll talk about which Republicans are successful in the polling that you found, but let's talk about the term that was thrown around all over the place nationally and here in Illinois, and that's the word extreme. What did you guys find when you talked about which side of the aisle is more extreme?
Well, you would have expected, again, that after an election where Democrats spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to paint Republicans as extreme, they painted our nominee for governor as extreme. That was their central message. So you'd expect in the poll that you would have seen that voters would think Republicans are overwhelmingly extreme, and maybe Democrats are a little bit extreme. But actually, that's not what we found. We found it was almost a tie. 43% said Republicans are extreme, and 42% said Democrats are extreme. Only a 1% difference, and Republicans didn't really push that message. What that tells me is voters are kind of fed up with both parties, to be honest. But ultimately, it's not a fight over Republicans are extreme and need to move towards the middle. It's both parties are too extreme. Both parties are abandoning voters, and I think that's true. Anecdotally, when you just look at both parties, my wife and I don't agree on everything politically. She's a bit more to the left than me, and she says that the Democratic Party left her, not the other way around. And a lot of people feel like the Republican Party left them. I think most voters are there in the middle, and both parties have missed the boat.
So with that, looking at how Republicans fared, talk about, I guess, the profile of the Republicans that are successful in a state like Illinois.
Yeah, this is where most people like me make a mistake. They say, oh, the Republican Party has to move towards the middle, and that's a miss. That's wrong. Ultimately, this is a gigantic state. It's a very diverse state. And so if you look for a candidate that fits the model of, let's say, a Northern Illinois candidate, they're not necessarily going to work great in Aurora or Champaign or Southern Illinois or Sangamon County. This is a very big state. It's diverse. What you need are candidates that actually fit the district, not one model of a candidate that fits the entire state. It's not conservative versus moderate. What we saw in this poll, what we saw across the country on Election Day, was the candidates that did the best, especially among Republicans. The candidates that did the best are what we call governing Republicans. That's not conservative. That's not moderate. That's simply the profile of somebody who's the adult in the room, who's a leader, who gets things done. That's what voters are looking for. In this state, Chicago's famous for it. South suburbs, famous for it. Even Springfield is famous for it, where voters will reelect people who are even convicted crooks if they get things done. And that's what voters in this state want. They want leaders who will go in the room, who will lead, who won't create drama, but will find some way to make their lives better. That's what voters are looking for. And so if you're trying to find the profile of an electable Republican, it's somebody who is that adult in the room, who gets things done, they can be conservative, they can be moderate, but they go in there and they get things done, and they don't create problems for voters who have very, very busy lives. They're not looking for this drama. They're just looking for you to somehow make their life a little bit better.
Colin Corbett with us. He is from Core Strategies, a recent poll they released post-election with some interesting findings here. Colin, we just got about a minute left. What should people take away from this? What should Republican strategists, for instance, take away from this?
I think it's the type of candidate you run. It's the messaging that you have. And I really think that of the things we haven't covered yet, the biggest thing for me is talking about issues that voters actually care about. You know, everyone's talking about Twitter right now. We're talking about national news that doesn't really impact people's daily lives. In this poll, people said they cared the most about things that impacted them and their family. And so if you're going to be a successful candidate, you've got to be that leader who can lead on issues that matter to voters right now. Right now, it's the economy, it's crime, yes, it's abortion, it's hot button issues, but it's things that impact everyday voters. So stop being in the clouds and go there and walk doors, knock neighborhoods, talk to voters, and find out what matters to them. It's not about white paper solutions. It's about making people's lives better.
Colin Corbett with Core Strategies. Greatly appreciate your time. Looking forward to more stuff you guys are going to be having coming out in the months ahead, so please do keep us posted, all right?
Have a great week. Thanks for having me.
You too. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 W.